smack your. Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. System Basketball Zoomcast. Tonight's edition, we have Joel DeBruhl from Seattle Academy. He's been the head coach there since 2016. And he has a record of 68-21 there, and he's been running the system since 2007. So tonight should be a good one with a veteran high school system coach. So, Coach, obviously you started in 2007 with it, and so how did it come about? How did you find out about the system? What led you to it?
Well, it was way before 2007.
Okay.
I was I think a college sophomore, junior, 1987. I was in South Carolina, going to the University of South Carolina, and I just started coaching high school basketball, assistant coach, and I stayed up late, watched one of those West Coast games on ESPN, which started about midnight. And that was the first time I'd ever seen Paul Westhead's LMU teams, and I'd never seen the system. And I'm watching them, and I think they were playing Long Beach State. And it was like, it's probably like the first time you saw your bride, right? It was like something just magically happened. And like the first time I saw mine, of course. But I'm sitting there, it's like I had an epiphany. Just watching it, and I was just enthralled by what was going on. It was a circus, and it was like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And on that night, I decided that's how I'm going to coach when I become a head coach, which didn't happen for quite a while, largely because I stopped coaching high school basketball for about 14, 15 years. So, because I got a job in the business world where they don't really want you to leave during the middle of the day to go play basketball. So, but yeah, so I've first time I saw the system was I think 1987. So 2007 rolls around. I'd studied the system for a while. I got back into high school basketball coaching in 2004. I was on the boys' side, and we were about as far away from the system as you can get. Wilsonville High School, which is a very successful program. Coach Roach, amazing coach. They've won multiple state championships, but first one to 50 wins and play 7 people, no shot clock, and let's just keep working it around until we get a good one. So it was great and all, and I learned a lot about man-to-man defense. But when I became a head coach in 2007, I realized that I was going to do something different. And so I picked up the phone and I called Coach A, David Arsenal, over at Grinnell, and asked him if I could maybe come to Iowa and talk to him a little bit about the system. And he said, sure, come on out. And I ended up staying at his house for a week, slept in Dave Jr.'s bed. Dave Jr. wasn't there, which was a good thing. He was in Canada or something playing with the national team. And yeah, learned pretty much everything I needed to know, because you can pick up things in the books and the videos, but it's like that secret sauce you don't ever get in the championship productions video. So yeah, it was great.
So if there was a person listening tonight and they didn't know anything about the system, okay, what would be your definition of what system basketball is?
To me, system basketball is 100% total chaos, just basically non-basketball. It's basketball, but it's different. System basketball can be played. There's some that play it without the 5 in and 5 out. And there's always the people that say, yeah, we're gonna press and everything, but we're not gonna give up layups, and and we're still gonna. But to me, you're putting every ounce of energy on defense to get the ball back as quickly as you can, so that you can shoot it as quickly as you can. And it's just all about creating pace and getting up and down the floor and basically just making chaos happen.
So based upon that, would you consider yourself a system purist? Do you do the 5 in, 5 out Grinnell subbing since you learned from Coach A, or do you hybrid?
Oh no, I'm 5 in and I'm 5 out. Unfortunately, this past year, Seattle Academy is a smaller school. Only had 11 players on the varsity, and then I had a couple of kids get hurt late. Another kid got a concussion, so I was down to 8 people. So I'm not a math guy by any stretch. I was a journalism major, so it's tough to do the 5 in and 5 out when you've only got 3 people on the bench.
I'm following
I
you.
tried it one time and ended up playing 3 on 5, and it didn't really work.
You
So
didn't suit up and go
I
in?
took the 5 out. Well, I was my assistant is one of the Northwestern great lacrosse players, and she's a pretty good basketball player, and she looks young, so I probably could have gotten away with that, but we'd still only have 4. So if I've got enough players, then I always go 5 in and 5 out. It's just what I do.
So you got hired at Seattle Academy, and you pitched system from day one in the interview and everything?
Absolutely, because that's the way I coach. That's the way I believe. That's every ounce of my coaching being is system. If I couldn't coach system, I don't know if I would coach, quite honestly, because this past year when we had to slow it down, and we ran an offense, but we didn't press full court once we got down to 8 players, and we would trap in the half court. Or the times when we were up by 25-ish, we'd stop pressing. It's like pulling teeth watching a regular game now for me. It's just the thrill of coaching a regular basketball game is worn off.
So did you do a PowerPoint to get your team buy-in, admin buy-in, or did you just roll with it and just start putting it in?
Well, so I put it in at a few different places, very different places. Milwaukee High School in 2007, they had won 1 game the year before. They're 1-23, I think. Lost 1 game, 82-8. They averaged. There were like 8 or 9 games where they scored in the teens, and so I ran the system there not so much to win, but to give the girls something to be excited about. We're thinking, let's lose 70-45 instead of 50-20. So that's what we did. We didn't win a lot of games, but we were a lot closer, and we had kids scoring a lot of points. And then we had people that were absolutely astounded that we could shoot 73 3-pointers in 1 game. Now, I would have liked to have made more, and then I wouldn't have had the lady coming down from the top row of Oregon City High School telling me that there's more to basketball than 3-pointers. But we wouldn't have beat Oregon City playing regular anyway, since they have national high school, champion banners hanging all over the place. I've never been worried about getting buy-in from players. I sell it, and I was in advertising sales for years. That's why I didn't coach basketball. So maybe I can sell better than the others. But I sell it as if you guys have not lived yet until you've seen this. This is how you should play basketball. And I just sell it like this is the greatest thing you're ever going to be a part of, because everybody gets to play, everybody gets to shoot. I don't do the preferred shooter until we get to the playoffs. Then I have a nice little sit-down conversation with some girls and kind of talk to them about percentages and the fact that you're shooting 10% from 3-point range. Maybe we can make that next pass to someone with a little higher percentage. But everybody, during the regular season gets to shoot, and everyone gets to play. And I get a lot of athletes, kids who don't play basketball year-round. At my current school, they won the state soccer championship. So we have soccer players who are athletic, and I just basically teach them a few things basketball wise. You know, we practice a lot of threes. We drive and shoot a floater, or we drive and we kick it. So when they get the ball, they're doing one of three things, and they're doing them quickly. But defensively, they're athletic and they get steals, and they know that if they get the ball, they're not to dribble for long stretches. Find someone who does. So, but to me, I've never had trouble with buy-in. I've had one parent or, you know, set of parents who have had an issue because they thought their daughter at, you know, one of my previous stops was a Division I player. It wasn't, but, you know, it's the way it is. You know, you're not always going to, not everyone's going to be happy, but there are a lot more people happy when they come to games watching their daughter or son play than when they come to games and watch their son or daughter sit on the bench for the whole game. So that's one reason why I started the system, was to increase participation, because so many kids, especially girls, drop out of athletics and organized sports right at when they're starting high school. And, you know, studies have shown that they do better in school, and they have better relationships and such if they're on teams and they're active. So the more that we can play, the better.
What is the biggest criticisms that you receive from parents, players, or even administration about running the system?
I've never really gotten any sort of complaints from my administration about running the system. We've had complaints from other administrations because score tends to be a little higher, but we don't get it that often because I've gotten pretty good at managing outcomes and such. I get a lot more positives than negatives. The only time we get a negative is if someone has a son or daughter who is the supposed star of the team and gets taken out of the game. And, you know, I've had I can't get into the flow conversation, and I just explain, if you can't get in the flow, then you're not playing hard enough. Because if you're playing as hard as you can for a minute, you should want to come out. And studies have been done on athletes and the amount of time they play and sit and recuperation. It's better to go hard for a short amount of time, get out, and then get back on the court than it is to play 4 minutes and then sit for 4 minutes. But I haven't had too many of those, you know, and I do a pretty good job of explaining. We have twice as many possessions as a regular game. So even though you're not playing, you know, you might be playing a half a game or a little more than half a game, you're going to get more shots than you would normally get. I mean, when I got to Seattle Academy, games were in the 30s, right? It's like, oh, we won 34-28. It's like, and I'm like, why didn't you play the second half? It's like, you know, just walking it up, and it's like there's just so much free time in the normal game. So we don't, yeah, there's not a lot of downtime in the Seattle Academy game, or as we call it, Sasketball. Uh-oh, I can't hear you.
What are the common misconceptions of system basketball?
I think the biggest misperception is that there's no real sense of strategy. People think that we're just flying around and it's not very disciplined, and there's not a whole lot of coaching to it. And they don't really understand that, you know, there is a method to the madness, and we run to every time we get the ball, kids are going to certain spots. They know where they're going. We know what we're doing, and we kind of made it so that we can do a certain thing so that we can get a shot off in less than 10 seconds. A lot of people think, oh, we're just out there flying around and being undisciplined and jacking up threes. And we're jacking up threes. We're just not being undisciplined at doing it. So
there's a method to the
there's more
madness.
to it. There's more to it than the untrained eye would be able to surmise.
Well, getting to know you the last few months, you've been on a couple of majority of the system Zoom clinics that we've had, and you do your system goals a little different. Would you mind sharing us how you came about your system goals?
Well, basically, I took what Coach A's got for the formula for success, and I kind of modified them a little bit for the length of a high school game because we play 8 minutes less. So I went 80%. I'm not a math person, so I had someone help me, but I took their goals, multiplied them by 80%, and then got there. But then kind of bumped them up because I honestly want to play faster. I want to play as fast as we can humanly play. I want to get 100 shots each game. I want 100 shots. 50 of those are going to be threes. Normally, you would say 80 field goal attempts because if the college system teams want to get 100, then we're talking about 80. I just say 100 shots, and I count field goals and free throws. So I just add them up, and if it gets to 100, we met the goal, and if it doesn't, then we didn't. So the 50 field goal 3-point attempts, a lot of people are like, you're crazy. How are you going to get – that's a lot of threes. One game we took 70 this year. Another game we took 68. We took 65% of our field goals this year were 3-point shots. Which is higher than I would like. My girls don't tend to drive it as much and try to get to the basket. We kind of settle. We're settlers, as we say. But that's a lot of threes. So 100 field goal attempts, 100 shots, 50 threes, rebound 1/3 of our misses. Force 32 turnovers, which is 1 per minute, and that's the easiest that we get. One game we forced 57 turnovers, and then last shoot 25 times more than our opponent. I've monkeyed around a little. I was thinking maybe doing something instead of forcing 32 turnovers to do something where it's a turnover differential, because not this year but last we had the trouble of forcing a turnover and then turning around and giving it right back to them. You don't want to force 46 turnovers and then commit 33. That doesn't really do you much good. So, but I just try to keep it simple for the kids. Everything is just geared towards pace. If we can get that field goal attempt or shot attempt up and we're getting our turnovers up, we should be fine. We almost always hit our rebound goal because that's the one thing I emphasize more than anything. With my girls, because if you're going to shoot 21 for 70 from 3-point range, it's a lot of misses. So every time a shot goes up, I'll ask if you ask any of my girls the last 4 years, what happens when a teammate shoots, she'll tell you that it's a pass to her. So you just got to go get it. So we tend to bump up around 40% on our offensive rebound percentage. So,
okay. If someone wanted to put in the system or run the system, what advice would you give them as far as getting into what people would refer to as the circus, the dark side, coming into system basketball? What advice of how they should go about doing it?
Well, I think first and foremost, they probably need to seek therapy. Or maybe just look inside and get to know themselves a little bit, because not everyone can do it. Everyone seems to think they can do it, but when you're there and you're giving up layups, or you got some kid just shooting a 3 6 seconds after you had the ball, it takes a different mentality to coach it. You have to you lose a little bit of control. A lot of coaches are controlling. I mean, they say they want a fast break, but they also want to, put the hand up and tell them to hold up so they can go to the wristband and call a play. Because if they're doing that, then they're having more sense of control. With the system, if you're running it the way it should be run, things are just going too fast to have like a lot of control over what's going on in the game. So you have to have your team really prepared, and they have to know what they're doing. So if you're going to switch and go to the system, you got to realize that it is so different than the way most boys or girls have played basketball, that there's a learning curve, and there's going to be some times where your team's going to look really, really bad. And when your team looks really, really bad, parents and in some school districts, administrators, they want to tell you how bad your team looked. And they want to give you advice on what you should have done. And you throw a few bad games in a row when you're still learning it together. Some people just jump off at that point because they don't want to deal with the naysayers. So there's definitely a learning curve, because it is so different. I mean, it's totally different. So.
And you've had a lot of experience.
You just have to kind of be able to filter some of that out. And you got to believe that what you're doing is the right thing. And I think that's where a lot of people who, were on these systems Zoomcast, and we got 60, 70 coaches. And then you send the poll of how many are actually system coaches, and it's less than half that. So that tells me we've got a bunch of people that are trying to either learn so that they may do it, or they're kind of on, they're on the fence, or they're trying to learn more about an opponent. But if you're on the fence and you go into the season and you're trying to sell it, and you've just gotten off the fence, you're not going to have the conviction for the kids and the parents to believe that this is what you really need to do. I mean, if you're going to, it's not a toe in the water kind of thing. If you're going system, it's, you got to go Greg Louganis and just dive right in.
So you've been doing it since 2007. I'm sure you've changed over the years, and you've done different varieties of stuff with your offense. Are you pretty true to the system in terms of your defense? Do you use the main presses, or what do you employ?
I would say so. One thing we don't do as well at Seattle Academy as I'd like is the what we call Reno. When Dave Jr. was at Reno with the big horns, just anytime the other team gets the ball, two people are trapping. If say we shoot and miss and the other team gets the rebound, to trap right away. We don't press as well off of misses, but as far as a make goes, or a dead ball, referee handle, we start in on, and we'll go to off if we're not doing a good job of getting that first trap. But I'd pretty much say that we've tinkered a bit with certain groups, kind of playing a 3/4 court, like a 1-2-2 or a 1-2-1-1. Something that I do that's different than most is I basically have one person who's a rim protector, and she's not, so I watch a lot of Grinnell games, much to the dismay of my bride, who apparently wants to watch something that involves a real housewife from somewhere. And she's like, do we have to watch Grinnell? That's why we have 7 TVs and 4 kids, or 4 people in the house. But I watch a lot of Grinnell, and they give up a lot of layups because the back part of their press, they got 5 people pressing, and they give up layups, and then they go fast the other way. We don't shoot it well enough to give up a bunch of layups, So we press with 4 people, and then we just funnel them into our rim protector. Because in the girls' game, if you can just contest a little bit, you're going to force a lot of misses. Or they'll end up pulling up shooting the mid-range, jumper. I don't know what California's like, but up here in Washington, the high school girls love the mid-range game. It's like everyone's back in 1988 or something. But so we end up giving that shot up a lot. But we end up pressing with 4 people. So sometimes it's full court. And then if they get back in the half court, we're in what we call scramble. And the 2 closest to the ball are trapping. 2 people are interceptors. And then we have 1 person who, if they leave the lane, there's a stern talking to. Not too long from the time they left the lane. Because we just don't want to give up layups. We give up a lot of wide open jumpers. But if we're doing things right, we give up wide open jumpers when teams are playing faster than you used to play them. And so they don't make as many of them.
Is that just experience that taught you that, or something you learned, or that a really good high school adjustment that you think most high schools should switch to with the designating someone? Because we don't shoot the ball as well. We don't.
I'm all about the analytics. If they're not shooting mid-range jumpers in the NBA, there's a reason. And so the very first thing that I did 4 years ago, first practice, I explained the rule of the long 2, which is if you shoot a long 2, if it goes in, you stay in. If it goes out, you come out. And then I had girls trying to explain, like, go to certain spots on the court and ask, what about here? If I miss here, do I come out? I'm like, yes. And then they'll like step in, and just so that I explain to, so they, the whole thing was new to them. They now know. I still do it first day of practice. But we talk about the number of points you get when you shoot the mid-range. It's to the point now where, like, we'll go to like a Husky game as a team, a Washington Husky game, and someone will shoot like a 16-footer, 17-footer, and someone will look down and say, she's shooting a long 2. So I've kind of, it's ingrained in them now. We just don't like that shot. We don't make enough of them. And the teams that like, if we're playing a zone, because we kind of do a 2-3 Syracuse like, zone, but without Hakeem Warwick or Derek Coleman, kind of linked. But they were always like so stressed if the ball got to the free throw line, like, what do they do? And I'm like, look, if they make 26 of the 26 15-footers, they might beat us. But I'm thinking they're not going to. So if it gets to the high post, we basically just kind of let the person in the middle of the zone play, and we still cover the 3. So we want to shoot 3s and we want to guard the 3, and I'm not worried about the mid range. So
how you generate your shots, Coach? Are you 5 out, 4 out, 1 in, Grinnell style? How do you get your?
We don't ever go really 4 out, 1 in. We're always 5 out. We want to get the ball to our playmaker, our point guard. I have 2 point guards, 1 for each shift, but one of them is the league MVP, and we kind of do the LMU break, but we kind of do the Grinnell break. We keep the 2. We run the 2 to the right corner, and we head man it up. If she's open, then she shoots it. If she doesn't shoot it, then she's driving, and then she'll kick it back to the one who's coming behind her, or she drives the floater and she kicks it to the other side. We start every game in what we call Grinnell, which is where we run the 2 through, and she gets 2 screens. We don't have our trail post go and set that 3rd screen. If we did, we'd call that Pioneer. Instead, we just want to open up that whole right side of the floor, and I let my point guard take it, get in the lane. The trail post follows behind. We get that shot a lot. So we'll everything we do, if it's a referee handle, all of our stuff is basically run out of our transition set, just so that kids know where they are, and it's not something different. We don't get a lot of practice time. Seattle Academy is a rigorous academic experience, so we never get more than 90 minutes, and even then sometimes we get less than that. So we don't, I can't throw a whole bunch of sets. And also a lot of the girl, like I said, they don't have a lot of basketball experience. So we spend most of our time practicing shooting and then going over our sets. The thing we get more than anything is zone. We get zoned a lot. And the thing that we do more than other people do is we set screens against zones. So we run a lot of set plays against zones. So that's how we get shot. We want to get a shot as quick as we can, because what I found is the longer we have it, the greater the chance is we're going to turn it over. So quicker we can shoot, because once we get the ball up on the glass, even if we don't make it, if we get the offensive rebound, we're going to get another shot quickly. And it's usually a 3-point shot. So we just want to get a shot up quickly.
Let's talk roster size and shifts. What do you think is the ideal roster size for high school? For system?
I'd probably say 15,
okay,
knowing that you're going to have 1 or 2 people injured. Not 15 where you're going to go, 3 groups of 5.
Okay.
Ideally, I enjoyed it best when I had 14 girls and then I had 2 different groups of 7. With the 5 on each who clearly knew that they were, in essence, the 5 starters in that group. But then I could mix in a couple of players here and there. But and if that were the case, I always did 2 groups of 7.
Do you just?
I used to start. I used to start with my. So our colors are red and black, and so we have red and white reversible uniforms. So I have a red group and a white group, but then we'd have a black group that would start the game. And it was always my 5 best players, and theoretically those 5 would then finish the game, right? But we always started off poorly because you'd think if you're playing your 5 best players that you would start off better, but they didn't play together as a unit very often, except for the start of games. And then it would always, because the next shift I would have to like bring 2 or 3 in, stay with people that were in that would double shift. And then the next one, people would come in. We wouldn't get into the flow right away. So I've started now just doing like what Coach Dave Jr. does and just starting one of the groups and then the other group, and not putting a great emphasis on a starting 5 per se. That's one area where I could see parents getting upset, is if, Johnny's supposed to be a starter, but game starts and Johnny's group isn't the one that's supposed to be starting that night, and they're wondering why isn't Johnny starting? He was first team all league last year, not knowing that, it doesn't really matter because they're coming in a minute or less later. I think in situations like that, you just got to probably communicate better with the parents. I've been fortunate; I don't have to deal with that. My parents don't tend to. I mean, we won a lot of games. You get more problems when you lose, I think. So, and their kids are playing.
Correct. So you came on and you showed us a spreadsheet. So you kind of do yours a little different as well. A lot of people kind of try to keep everything standard within their system of their groups, but you mix it up a little bit. So like you said, you're red and black. So your red team will run a certain offense and your black will run a certain and they'll both play different defenses. Is that throughout the whole game, or is it based upon who you're playing against? How do you determine that?
A lot of it's based on who we're playing. The good thing is, if you've been there a certain amount of time, you know usually what the other team likes to run. If we're going to see a lot of zone or see a lot of man or so forth. But I script it out for the first half, and then make adjustments if necessary. If not, then we'll just take what we're doing in the first quarter and start it over in the third quarter. If the game's competitive, the fourth quarter doesn't go off of the spreadsheet. But in the first quarter, I've got a group. Here's where they're playing, on offense, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And our 4s and 5s are a little different. They're all still outside the 3-point line. The 4 inbounds it, and they're the trail posts. But so that it's where they're going in on offense, and then where they are in the press on defense, and what press we're running. So they got to know where they are on offense, where they are going to be on defense, and then we have one play that's what their group is running when they're in there. So ideally we're subbing after the first 45 seconds, the first dead ball after 45 seconds. And I say that ideally because my assistant coaches, need to be better at substituting. And I keep telling them, we got to, because they have a tough job, because their job is to get the 5 that are going in ready to go in. And high school girls love answers, right? They want to know exactly what is going to happen in that 1 minute and what they should do in that 1 minute. They're not big on the surprises or the going with the flow. So they ask a lot of questions of my assistants, and invariably it's like I'm looking, and the kids out there are exhausted. They've been out there for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and the other teams, she's got a dry erase board explaining this. So, it's kind of like when, because I coach tennis too, the kids will warm up, and it'll be 30 minutes of a 5-minute warm up, because as long as you're warming up, nobody's losing, right? So if they're on the bench asking questions, then they haven't made a mistake yet. But so they got to know what to do when they go in. It's hard sometimes when you get the foul and the shooter misses the second free throw, and so now you've got a sub on the sideline waiting to go in, and you got different people. Yes. But because I don't always have, so I'll have one point guard who's smaller than my other point guard, and so there are different places on defense. So it's kind of hard sometimes in that. If that's the case, then we'll foul right away. So, which is something that I have to teach, and because sometimes my girls just go and just shove people or tackle them like it's a football play or something.
So you have 2 assistants, 3 assistants?
I have 1 full-time assistant.
Okay. And
then I have a second assistant who goes to school at University of Washington, who played for me my first year. She averaged 23 for us, and she came back this year. And so with her schedule, sometimes she's, can't make it all the time, but yeah.
So your assistant does the shift chart?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have one that's that just follows and it's for me it's just great, because I don't have to think about, do I need to put this person in, for that or this or that, because it's all on the spreadsheet and they're doing it, and I'm not dealing with that. So I just focus on the game, and then I coach if the 5 that are coming off, if I saw something I need corrected, I can just talk to them before they, get ready to go back in. but I don't have to think about who should I put in for this or that. Now I do if it's a close game and it's fourth quarter, and I kind of go off the 5 in and 5 out because we have a gap. We have three, like this past year, we had 3 girls who play AAU basketball, and they play a lot. They basically play, most of the year. And then we have a number of girls who don't touch a basketball between February and November. So, with the 5, we have some people that if this were move or blocker offense, they're blockers. They're offensive lineman types. They're rebounding and playing defense and setting screens, and not everybody gets to be Russell Wilson. So, when it comes late and we're playing a playoff type game, it's we kind of go to what would be that black group, and we do play a little more traditional game, but we also because we have so many more possessions and we get the ball up and we shoot it quick, we have a lot of lopsided games. And so the second half a lot of times is played where we're bumping up to a running clock, or, we're up by 25 and, one game this year we're up 27-0. And I'm like, okay. And I scrapped the 5 in and 5 out, and I'm just playing, my least experienced players and, trying to keep it, competitive. So it's every game's kind of different, but so that's why I don't script out the whole game, because usually it never gets to that. First half usually though is, pretty good.
If you were in one of those tight games, when would you go with your finishing group, or whatever you refer to it at? What about 3 minutes or what? 3 minutes left?
Usually it's around the 4-minute mark, like halfway through the end of the fourth quarter. Anything longer than that, the kids they get tired, or we just have to flat out go back and not press at all. But yeah, last 4 minutes. I'm a Dean Smith person. I grew up in South Carolina, so I grew up, watching lots of North Carolina basketball, and a lot of Dean Smith. What he did is still in my my system, and they used to say, they thought he could take his timeouts with him to the grave, but I always save my timeouts. And so if I'm going 4 minutes, I can take timeouts so that I can get my girls a timeout so that I can rest them, so that I don't have to substitute my 5 best players. So you get 5 in a game, and I rarely take one in the first half unless I have to impart some motivational wisdom if they're not playing as hard as they should, but I don't like to do that.
What do you feel is the hardest part to install in the system?
Getting kids to play at the energy level that they need to play for the system to be successful. Like understanding how hard it is to play, because for years kids have played knowing that, hey, I'm going to play the first 6 or 7 minutes, and they pace themselves. You can't play 100 miles an hour for an entire quarter or for 5 or 6 minutes. So kids pace themselves. And so that's how they think basketball is played. When I got there, it was, let's walk the basketball up the court because the other team's not pressing. And then we'll, pass it around and shoot it. And then we'll walk back, and then they'll walk it up. And you can play a full quarter that way without getting tired. But to play as hard as you need to play in the system, that's an adjustment for a lot of kids. And a lot of them just don't understand how hard they have to play.
Does your lower?
At the end of a game, I'm amazed at coaches. Like Coach A would sit down at the end of the bench opposite of his assistant coach, and just kind of watched the game. I've had one technical foul in my entire coaching career, and it was this past season. And in Washington, if you get a technical foul, you get a seatbelt, so you have to sit down with the imaginary seatbelt on. That's the only time I think I've sat down coaching. So I'm up and I'm animated, and I'm asking them to trap and press and move it, because if I don't, then the default is to like jog back and set up on defense, or, when I was at West Lynn, my principal, who came to all the games, and he would sit at the door right down from the home bench. And one day he goes, "Do you know what word you say more than any other during a game?" And I said, "I'm hoping it's not something that I would get in trouble for saying," thinking I maybe said, And he said, "No, you say go." So as soon as the other team scores, I'm yelling, "Go, go," because I just want us to go as fast as possible. Because if I don't do that, then they won't go as fast as they need to go. So that's, to me, getting kids to play at that fast a pace and at that intensity level is the toughest thing about coaching the system.
Well, you sound like so I don't know if I
what?
So
You sound like what?
I'm a pacer
What do I sound
myself.
like?
So
Yeah.
I don't know if I can just sit at the end of the bench and just say, hey, because I think that's one of the misconceptions of system coaches is we just sit there and roll out the ball and let the kids play.
Yeah.
I'm known to, I think, kind of like you sounding like, where I have to be animated and provide some of the intensity, I guess, if you will, to get them to press and to play with a certain level, because it's kind of like, oh shucks, we have a basketball game sometimes, and where we've won 39 games the last 2 years, and much like yourself, you've had a great program, and it seems like a lot of people think system basketball is the end all be all, like cure, and I know that's not. You got to be doing it for the right reasons, and it's, number one, was supposed to be for participation for people, but I know you are, and I am too. You'll give up your goals in a game to wrap it up to win it. Like,
oh yeah,
I know there's other people that said, no, I have to hit my number, or I have to hit that. No. We play the game to win the game. I'm going to sound like Herm Edwards here in a second. So,
you play to win the game.
So
you don't just play to play it.
Yeah. So is there anything that you've learned over the years that you wish you would have known from the start when you first started putting it in that would have helped you, like in your early days? Or is that too hard?
That's kind of a tough question. I don't know how much I would wish I would know now that I didn't know then, because I pretty much, I knew what I was going to do when I did it. I think my biggest problem is trying to do too much. Like, we have too many set plays. We don't have enough practice time for me to put in, because my girls don't just eat, drink, sleep basketball. And it's so frustrating when I call out a play and I get 2 or 3 of the 5 kind of like looking around like I don't really know what to do. So this year, just in the Zoom clinics and hearing the coaches, I'll probably scale back and make it simpler than, do we really need 10 different zone offenses or things to do to, so I'll probably make it a little simpler for the girls. I'm changing my transition attack because of Coach Joe Haig's 3 dribble transition. But in terms of the coaching this system, I think that would be it. Just keep it a little more simple than I've had it. You know.
Would you advise a senior coach to just put in like two defenses, like on and off, and not put all of them in, just to really focus on getting the kids how to play hard and fly around? Or would you put the gamut in, all four?
If they have enough players to where they can go like legitimate two different groups, then I would have one group that they get really, really good at one press, and then have the other one do something totally different, so that when they come in, they're showing that the other team a different look every minute. We do that, and it just confuses teams because they're like, oh, well, it's a zone press, so we got to run this press breaker, and then 5 new girls come in, and then all of a sudden it's a totally different press. That I would do. And the other thing I would do is, depending on if they're in a state with a shot clock versus no shot clock, is how to trap in the half court, and not worry so much about giving up open shots, as long as those open shots aren't layups, but just getting teams to get rid of the ball sooner.
You'd be more
either a shot or a turnover.
You'd be more aggressive with the shot clock, right?
What?
You'd be more aggressive defensively in the half court if your state had a shot clock, correct?
I would be more aggressive in a state without a shot clock.
Okay.
Because otherwise they can just spread out and pass it around, because I had that when I was at West Lynn, and it's just so frustrating. And then, if you're not in a shot clock, make sure you have a way to run a half court trap to where you can get the other team to shoot it quicker, because you don't want to be a system team that ends up playing defense for 45 seconds to a minute. Then the other team, now you got 5 people coming in. If you're running true pure 45-second new shift come in after a dead ball, and the other team, your team has only played offense one time, then you're going to get people saying, well, I can't get in the flow because I'm not getting any shots up. If you're going to play the system, you got to figure out a way to get the other team to get rid of the ball, either by turnover or by shot quickly. You can't really be a system team if you're going to let the other team pass it around the half court. Thankfully, in Washington, we have a 30-second shot clock. So Oregon still doesn't have one. But
yeah. So when you're doing that, and you made the suggestion on switching up your presses, when you make your groups, how often do your groups change? Do they pretty much stay once you got them, or do they change throughout the year, or do they kind of stay set for you?
They're pretty set. It takes a little while to figure out because we don't have very many days of practice before our first game. And so, especially when, like this year, the soccer team won the state championship. So they missed the first 6 or 7 practices because they were still playing. So it's hard to figure out quickly what the best group is. But once we get an idea, who works well. And quite honestly, each group has 3 preferred scorer playmaker types. One's preferred ball handler, and the other 2 are who we get shots for. That's who I got to figure out which of those work best. Got the 1 and the 2 and the 4, and then if we can get those 3, then we fill in with the 3 and the 5 usually. But as long as we can figure that out, they tend to stay the same, which allows us to, to kind of alternate defenses. Because if you're moving back and forth between groups, then it's hard to become really, really good at one press versus another.
Well, Coach, you've won 3 titles in 4 years there. What do you think? And you made it to 3 Sweet 16s. So,
yep.
What's the forecast look for next season?
I just hope there's a next season. I'm not I'm not even sure. Word has it we may not start till January, which we're up here in the Northwest, we're a little we all wear masks. I was going to do this whole Zoomcast with a mask on, but since I'm in the man cave by myself, I figured it'd be okay.
Well,
But,
I'm gonna.
so this year, I think we'll be pretty good. We're switching leagues. They're doing a realignment thing, and so we have a whole new league. So I know one team in our league, Kings, is always really, really good. So we got another few teams. So it's like half of our league from last with this new league, and we're merging. So we'll see. We'll be good though.
One of the clinic coaches gave me my Simpson background.
I love that.
And it says the system instead of the Simpsons. He made
I
it.
like that. That's supremely clever. Who did that?
Coach Huddleston. So
Nice.
he sent it to me the other day. I'm like, I'll save that for Joel's system Zoomcast.
I love it. I love it.
You guys have been trying to tell me I should put like a different background for each one and then play Guess Where I'm At.
Just tell them just keep sending them your way.
Exactly.
You know.
So you don't think you're hoping, you're praying. We just got notice that I can start doing some workouts with the players starting June 22nd. So we're optimistic here in California that we'll be able to have a season. So I'll learn more tomorrow, actually. But Coach, I just want to wish you luck. Thank you for coming out. You've been a loyal clinic attendee and contributor to the system clinics, and hope you've enjoyed them throughout COVID. And
I love them. Otherwise, I'd have to talk to my family, and we don't want to do that.
You want to leave any last words of advice for our listeners about the system?
If you're thinking about doing it, then you need to really think hard about giving up control and doing it. But if you're going to do it, you better do it, and you better be have this conviction. Otherwise, I would stick to what you're comfortable with. That's my that'd be my advice. But I wouldn't coach any other way. I love it.
All right. Well, that was great, Joel. I appreciate your time tonight. I'm Coach Mark Hart with System Basketball, and we'll see you on the next System Basketball Zoomcast.